My suitcase hit the porch steps with a sickening thud. Rain poured down in sheets as Tyler stood in the doorway, his face twisted with rage I'd never seen before. "Dad's gone, Ava. You don't belong here anymore." His words cut through the storm like knives. I looked past him to where Mom stood, clutching her new husband's arm, her eyes averted. She wouldn't even look at me. "This is Dad's house," I pleaded, my voice breaking. "He built it for us." Tyler's laugh was cruel, bitter. "He built it for me." The door slammed so hard the porch light flickered. I stood there, soaking wet, staring at the blue paint Dad and I had chosen together 3 summers ago. My childhood home. My father's legacy. The only place I'd ever felt safe. And just like that, I was locked out of it forever. My name is Ava Miller, and that was the night I learned that blood can turn colder than rain. I sat on the curb, rain mixing with my tears. My phone buzzed. Tyler's text glowed in the darkness, "Don't come back." We changed the locks. I looked up at the house, watching shadows move behind the curtains. The workshop light was still on in the garage, where Dad's tools hung exactly where he'd left them. I could see the porch beam where he'd carved my name when I was 8, his way of saying I'd always belong there. My duffel bag held everything I owned now, 3 changes of clothes, Dad's old wristwatch, and a photo of us building the kitchen table together. Nothing else. Tyler had made sure of that. I pulled Dad's watch from the bag, its familiar weight solid in my palm. He'd given it to me the week before he died, pressing it into my hands with shaking fingers. I made a silent promise sitting there in the rain, "I'll be back." Not the way you think. 10 years earlier, everything had been different. I was 13, holding a piece of sandpaper while Dad guided my hand across the wood grain. "See how you go with it, not against it," he said, his voice patient and warm. "That's the secret, Ava. Work with what you've got." We were making a kitchen table from scratch, spending every Saturday in the garage. Tyler had walked past that day, hands in his pockets, shaking his head. "You two and your little projects," he'd muttered. "What a waste of time." Dad had just smiled, but I saw something flash in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe. Tyler was 17 then, more interested in his friends than family. He never understood why Dad and I spent so much time together, why I wanted to learn how to use a miter saw and measure twice before cutting. "She's my right hand," Dad would tell people proudly. Those words made Tyler's jaw tighten every single time. Dad's illness came suddenly, like a thief in the night. One day he was teaching me how to fix the porch railing, the next, he could barely stand. The hospital became our second home, its sterile smell replacing the sawdust and wood varnish I associated with him. I stayed by his bedside every day after school while Tyler showed up sporadically, always with an excuse. But Carol, Mom's new husband's presence, grew more frequent. She'd married him just 2 years after Dad's divorce from Mom, and now she hovered around Dad's hospital room like a vulture. One night, I heard her whispering to someone on the phone outside his room. "When he's gone, that girl won't have anything to claim." My stomach dropped. She was talking about me. I pressed myself against the wall, listening as she continued. "The house goes to Tyler. I've made sure of it." I wanted to burst through those doors and scream, but Dad was sleeping, his face peaceful for the first time in days. The funeral was on a Thursday. Rain again, as if the sky itself was mourning. I stood at the graveside, numb, watching them lower Dad into the ground. Tyler stood on the other side, dry-eyed, checking his phone. Carol dabbed at fake tears with a handkerchief, playing the grieving stepmother. Mom hadn't even come. After the service, people gathered at the house. Our house. Dad's house. I noticed things were different. Dad's favorite chair had been moved. His tools were missing from their usual spots. When I asked Carol about Dad's will, she smiled that thin, calculated smile. "He wanted peace, dear. Don't ruin that." Tyler nodded, standing beside her like a loyal soldier. "Dad left everything clear," he said. "No point digging around." But nothing felt clear. Dad had always told me he'd taken care of everything, that I'd be protected. Where were those promises now? I felt powerless, watching strangers drink coffee in Dad's house while his wishes disappeared into silence. 3 days after the funeral, I snuck into Dad's study late at night. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and my heart hammered in my chest. His desk was exactly as he'd left it, papers stacked neatly, his reading glasses folded on top. I started searching through drawers, looking for the will, for any documentation that proved what he'd intended. My hands shook as I rifled through folders. Then the light flicked on. "What the hell are you doing?" Tyler's voice made me jump. He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbing my wrist hard enough to bruise. "You're not taking what's mine." I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Dad's will is none of your business," he hissed. Carol appeared in the doorway, her face smug. "Tyler, should I call the police?" "She's trespassing." Trespassing. In my own father's house. I left in tears, Tyler's fingerprints burning on my wrist, knowing they'd done something terrible. Something Dad never would have wanted. A week later, I came home from my shift at the diner to find my key wouldn't turn in the lock. I tried again, confused, then noticed the lock itself was different. New. Shiny. Tyler's truck sat in the driveway, deliberately blocking where I usually parked. Carol's flowers had replaced Dad's tool rack on the porch. I pounded on the door, my heart racing. Neighbors' curtains twitched. I didn't care. I kept knocking until Tyler opened it halfway, his body blocking the entrance. "What are you doing?" I demanded. He looked at me with cold eyes I didn't recognize. "Go live your own life, Ava. This isn't yours anymore." "Dad left this house, to family," he interrupted. "And you're not family." "Not anymore." He shut the door. I heard the deadbolt slide home. I stood there for 20 minutes, knocking, calling, begging. Nobody came. That night, I slept in my car, parked 3 blocks away, crying until my eyes swelled shut. Everything Dad had built, everything he'd promised, gone. The next 3 months were a blur of friends' couches and spare bedrooms. Each place felt temporary, unwelcome. I was a burden even when people said I wasn't. One friend's mom, Mrs. Patterson, found me crying in her kitchen one morning. She sat down, took my hand, and said gently, "Honey, sometimes family's just who doesn't turn you away." Those words stayed with me. I took extra shifts at the diner, saving every dollar. Tips went into an old coffee can I kept under my mattress, whatever mattress I was borrowing that week. $5 here, $10 there. Each crumpled bill brought me closer to freedom. To independence. Maybe one day, to justice. I stopped talking about Tyler and the house. People's sympathy felt like pity, and I couldn't stomach it. Instead, I worked. I smiled at customers. I collected tips. And at night, I dreamed of the door slamming in my face, the sound echoing endlessly. 6 months after losing the house, I discovered something unexpected. A customer at the diner left behind a real estate magazine. I flipped through it during my break, studying photos of houses for sale, reading about property values and investment opportunities. Something clicked. Houses. Real estate. Property. The very thing Tyler had stolen from me could become my future. I started watching videos online at the library, learning about buying and flipping houses, about building equity, about how regular people created wealth through property. Every night after work, I studied. Mrs. Dalton, a regular customer who used to work as a realtor, noticed my magazine collection. "You interested in real estate, sweetheart?" she asked one day. I nodded, embarrassed. "I think about houses a lot." She smiled knowingly. "You've got the look. The hungry look. Come by my office Saturday. I'll teach you what I know." It felt like fate. Like Dad was still guiding me, even from beyond. Each house I studied felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Of the home I'd lost. News traveled fast in our small town. Tyler was burning through money like it was paper. He'd bought a new truck, then totaled it drunk. He'd invested in some friend's business that collapsed within months. Carol's marriage to Mom's new husband had grown tense. Apparently, he hadn't signed up to support Tyler's lifestyle. I heard these things through whispers, through former neighbors who still remembered me, through the town's efficient gossip network. Part of me felt satisfaction. Dark, bitter satisfaction. But I never said a word. Never reacted when people mentioned him. I just listened, filed the information away, and kept working. Mrs. Dalton taught me about market analysis, about seeing potential in damaged properties. Most people only see what's broken, she explained. But you, Ava, you see what it could be. She didn't know how right she was. Every broken house I studied, I saw myself. And I was learning how to rebuild. Mrs. Dalton became more than a mentor. She became the family I'd lost. She let me work out of her old office, teaching me how to read property listings, how to calculate renovation costs, how to spot a good deal. "You've got an eye for homes, sweetheart," she said one afternoon, reviewing my analysis of a foreclosed property. "Build something for yourself before you rebuild anything else." Her words became my mantra. I saved aggressively, living on almost nothing. Every dollar had a purpose: first month's rent on my own apartment, then an emergency fund, then investment capital. 3 years after sleeping in my car, I had $5,000 saved. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Nobody could take it away. Nobody could lock me out of it. I stared at the bank statement, remembering Tyler's words, "This isn't yours anymore." I whispered to the empty room, "Maybe not then. But soon." My first property deal was a tiny fixer-upper on the wrong side of town. The roof leaked, the kitchen was from 1970, and the carpet smelled like wet dog. But the bones were good. Solid foundation. Good structure. Everything else could be fixed. I used every dollar I'd saved for the down payment. Mrs. Dalton co-signed the loan, believing in me when no bank would. I worked on that house every spare moment. Learned to patch drywall from YouTube. Ripped out carpet myself. Painted every room. 3 months later, I sold it for $12,000 profit. The feeling of signing that deed, of seeing my name as owner, was electric. I sat in the empty living room after the sale, overwhelmed. I'd done it. From nothing, I'd created something. I remembered Tyler's sneer, "This isn't yours anymore." I smiled, alone in that empty house. Maybe not then. But now I'm building my own. 5 years had passed. I'd bought and sold 6 properties, each one teaching me something new. My savings had grown. My confidence had grown. I wasn't the scared 20-year-old sleeping in her car anymore. I was 25, successful, and healing. Then one morning, I walked into Morgan's coffee shop downtown and froze. Tyler sat at a corner table, looking older and harder than I remembered. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he laughed, that same cruel laugh from the porch steps. "Still in town, Ava? Still chasing scraps?" I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but I kept my voice steady. "Some scraps turn into homes, Tyler." Something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty, maybe. Fear. He stood up, trying to look down at me like he used to. "Still bitter about the house? Dad wanted me to have it. Get over it." I smiled, calm and cold. "I am over it. Completely." I walked past him, ordered my coffee, and left. His stare burned into my back, but I didn't look back. My real estate company, Miller Properties, grew steadily. I specialized in restoration projects, houses other people had given up on. Every successful project chipped away at the bitterness I'd carried for so long. I hired a small team. Found new investment partners. Built a reputation for bringing dying houses back to life. People started calling me the house whisperer, someone who could see beauty in ruins. But at night, I still dreamed of my father's house. The blue paint we'd chosen together. The porch beam with my name carved into it. The workshop where he'd taught me everything. Those dreams felt like unfinished business, like a wound that wouldn't quite heal. I tried to let it go. Tried to move forward. Built a good life despite everything. But something in me remained tethered to that house, to that night, to the door slamming in the rain. I didn't know that destiny was already in motion. That fate was preparing the perfect ending. 10 years after that terrible night, an email landed in my inbox. A new listing. I almost deleted it, I received dozens every day. But something made me click. The address appeared, and my heart stopped. 1247 Oakwood Drive. My father's house. The house Tyler had stolen. The house that haunted my dreams. My hands shook as I scrolled through the photos. The place looked terrible. Paint peeling, lawn overgrown, windows dirty. The workshop was visible in one photo, Dad's tools long gone, replaced by trash and neglect. The listing said foreclosure sale. Tyler and Carol were losing it. After everything they'd done, after stealing my inheritance and kicking me out, they'd destroyed what Dad built and now couldn't keep it. I sat staring at my computer screen for an hour, my mind racing. This wasn't just a business opportunity. This was fate. This was justice. This was my chance to reclaim what should have been mine all along. I picked up my phone and called my attorney. I need to set up a private buyer LLC. Today. The inspection appointment was scheduled for a Wednesday morning. I drove there with my attorney, Marcus, both of us silent. He knew the story, knew what this house meant. "You sure about this?" he asked as we pulled up. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The property manager met us at the door. She didn't recognize me, why would she? I was a different person now. Confident. Successful. No longer the broken girl in the rain. Walking through that door felt surreal. The entryway where Tyler had stood blocking me. The living room where Carol had threatened to call the police. Everything was smaller than I remembered, shabbier. They'd let it deteriorate. Dad would have been heartbroken. I walked through each room slowly, touching walls, remembering. The kitchen where we'd placed the table we built together, gone, replaced by cheap furniture. The study where I'd searched for the will, empty now, abandoned. But the bones were still good. Dad had built it right. It could be saved. In the garage, I found it, my name, carved into the beam. AVA in Dad's careful handwriting. I traced the letters with my finger, tears streaming down my face. "I'm buying it," I told Marcus. "Whatever it takes." The sale went through in 30 days. Tyler never knew who bought it. The LLC kept my identity hidden. I paid cash, no inspection contingencies, making it easy for the bank to approve. The day of closing, I sat in Marcus's office, signing papers. Each signature felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. "Congratulations," Marcus said, handing me the keys. "You own your father's house." I held those keys in my palm, the weight of them heavy with history. 10 years. 10 long years of working, saving, building, healing. And now, finally, it was mine. Not through inheritance or family. Through my own sweat and sacrifice. That felt better somehow. Purer. I drove by the house that evening to find an eviction notice on the door. Tyler had 3 days to remove his belongings. I sat in my car across the street, watching the sun set behind the roof Dad had shingled himself. I didn't feel victorious yet. I felt nervous. The real reckoning was still to come. I hired a crew immediately. Full renovation. We gutted the damaged parts but preserved everything Dad had built. I found treasures hidden in walls during demolition, my childhood drawings tucked behind wallpaper, Dad's initials carved into the garage beam beside mine, a photo of us at my 8th birthday party that had fallen behind the baseboard. Each discovery brought tears. This wasn't just a restoration project. It was archaeology of my own life, excavation of stolen memories. I worked alongside the crew every day, taking time off from my other projects. I needed to do this with my own hands, and needed to pour my heart into every detail. We repainted the exterior the exact shade of blue Dad and I had chosen. I replaced the porch railing he'd taught me to fix. I restored the workshop, buying quality tools to replace the ones Tyler had sold or destroyed. Every night, I left exhausted but fulfilled. This was more than revenge. This was healing. I was taking back what was mine and making it better than before. Making it worthy of Dad's memory. Making it home again. Word spread through the neighborhood. The old Miller house was being renovated. People stopped to watch, curious about the transformation. Former neighbors who remembered me would wave, not quite recognizing the successful woman I'd become. Tyler drove by one Tuesday afternoon. I saw him from the upstairs window, watching him slow down, his face confused and angry. He couldn't figure out who'd bought the house he'd lost. He circled the block 3 times before finally stopping. I watched him get out, approach one of my contractors. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw the contractor shrug, shake his head. Privacy agreements meant my crew wouldn't reveal anything. Tyler stood on the sidewalk, staring at the house for 10 minutes. I stayed hidden behind the curtain, my heart pounding. Not yet. The revelation wasn't ready yet. He needed to see the finished product first. Needed to see what I'd accomplished. When he finally drove away, I released a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Soon. Very soon. 3 months later, the renovation was complete. The house looked exactly like I remembered from childhood, but better. Fresh paint gleamed. New windows sparkled. The porch welcomed visitors instead of warning them away. I'd restored it to what Dad had envisioned, what it should have always been. I decided to host a neighborhood open house. Partly to show off the work, partly to reintroduce myself to old neighbors. But mostly, I knew Tyler would come. Curiosity would compel him. He'd want to see what had become of his lost inheritance. The day arrived sunny and perfect. People filled the house, complimenting the restoration. Former neighbors kept saying, "This looks just like when Bill Miller owned it." They didn't realize Bill Miller's daughter was standing right in front of them. Then, at 3 o'clock, Tyler walked through the door. He moved slowly through the rooms, touching walls, examining details. I heard him tell someone, "This is incredible. Whoever did this brought it back to life." He stopped in the living room, staring at the fireplace mantel. I'd placed a photo there, Dad and me, age 8, covered in sawdust, grinning at the camera. Tyler froze. His face went pale. I stepped out from the kitchen hallway, calm and steady. "Welcome home, Tyler." He stared at me like I was a ghost. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The crowd around us sensed something significant happening, conversations dying into silence. "You?" he finally managed. "How?" I smiled, not kindly. "Me. The girl you threw out of our father's house now owns it." I let that sink in, watching emotions flash across his face. Shock. Disbelief. Shame. "I don't understand," he stammered. "You had nothing. You were sleeping in your car." "I was sleeping in my car because you stole my inheritance," I corrected, my voice level. "But you threw me out with nothing except Dad's lessons. And those were worth more than you realized." People were openly staring now. Former neighbors who remembered that awful night, who'd heard the rumors, were putting pieces together. "Maybe we should talk privately," Tyler suggested, glancing around nervously. I nodded toward the study. "Dad's office. Seems appropriate." We walked through the crowd, their whispers following us. In the study, surrounded by restored wood and Dad's memory, Tyler finally collapsed into a chair. For the first time in 10 years, my brother looked small. We sat in silence for a long moment. The room felt heavy with everything unsaid, with years of hurt and betrayal. Tyler spoke first, his voice barely a whisper. "You don't know how hard it was after Dad died." I laughed, harsh and sharp. "I know exactly how hard it was. I lived it. In my car. On friends' couches. Working double shifts. I know hard, Tyler." He flinched. "Carol convinced me Dad wanted it this way. That you were too young, that you'd waste the inheritance. So you decided to waste it instead?" I watched him carefully. "How much of Dad's money is left? How much did you burn through before you lost the house?" His silence was answer enough. "Carol manipulated me," he finally said. "She changed the will. Forged parts of it. I didn't know until later, and by then you'd already kicked me out. Already changed the locks. Already destroyed our family." I shook my head. "You made choices, Tyler. Own them." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and saw someone he didn't recognize. Someone strong. Someone who'd survived despite him. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know that means nothing now, but I'm sorry." I stood up, walked to the window overlooking the porch. "You destroyed what was left of us. But I rebuilt myself. This house is proof." Tyler tried to say more, but I held up my hand. "Do you know what the worst part was? Not losing the house. Not sleeping in my car. Not the years of struggle." I turned to face him. "It was losing my brother. Losing you. Dad's death should have brought us closer, but you chose Carol's lies over our family. Over me." He wiped his eyes, tears streaming down his face. "I was young. Stupid. Greedy. You were 27, Tyler. Not young. Just selfish." The words were harsh but true. He'd been an adult making adult choices. "I've lost everything," he said, his voice breaking. "Carol left. Mom won't talk to me. I have nothing." "I had nothing 10 years ago," I reminded him. "The difference is, I built something from it. You can too, but you have to own what you did. Actually own it." I walked to the door. "You need to leave now." He stood shakily. "Can we ever?" "No," I interrupted. "We can't. You're my brother by blood, but you stopped being my family the night you threw me out. That door closed. It's not opening again." I watched him walk through the house, past the curious neighbors, out the front door. He didn't look back. After everyone left, I stood alone in Dad's study. The last room I'd restored, saved for last because it meant the most. I'd recreated it exactly as I remembered, his desk by the window, his reading chair in the corner, his favorite books on the shelf. I placed his photo on the desk, the same one he'd kept there. Dad in his work clothes, smiling at the camera, sawdust in his hair. "I did it, Dad," I whispered. "I got our house back. Our home." The setting sun streamed through the window, painting the room gold. I thought about the girl who'd sat on the curb in the rain, broken and betrayed. I thought about the years of struggle, of saving every penny, of learning and growing and building. All of it had led here. To this moment. To this victory. But it wasn't just about winning. It was about healing. About proving to myself that I could survive anything, rebuild anything, overcome anything. My business was thriving. I owned 7 properties. I had respect in my industry. And now, I had my father's house. I had home. For the first time since Dad died, I felt peace. Deep, true peace. I walked out to the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. The street was quiet, the neighborhood settling into evening. A car drove past slowly. "Tyler." I saw his face through the window, pale and haunted, too ashamed to stop. I didn't wave. Didn't acknowledge him. I didn't need to. He'd lost everything that mattered, and he knew it. His mistakes had cost him family, home, and dignity. Meanwhile, I stood on the porch of the house he'd stolen from me, the house I'd bought back through my own hard work. I'd transformed pain into purpose, betrayal into strength. I touched the porch beam, running my fingers over my carved name. Dad had put that there to tell me I'd always belong. Tyler had tried to erase that truth. But here I stood, 10 years later, proving Dad right. I took out my phone and pulled up an old photo, me at 13, Dad's arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning in the workshop. "He threw me out of this house once," I said softly to his memory. But what he didn't know was, he also threw me into my purpose. I didn't just buy back a home. I bought it back myself. The porch light flickered on, warm and welcoming. I went inside, closing the door gently behind me. Not slamming it. Just closing it. In the past. On the pain. On everything Tyler had taken. I was home. Finally, completely, truly home.